I'm really excited. We're speaking with Lisa Philp of Transition Group. She is, I believe, the expert in working with dental practices throughout North America. She's worked in both the US and Canada with thousands of dental practices to turn them into being not just profitable, but being extremely profitable. I remember that Lisa gave a term. She said most dentists, and this is a number of years ago when $1 million meant something, were filing cabinet millionaires, but they didn't even know it. And she would sit down with her team of experts and show them how to turn their practice into a well-oiled business. Lisa, thank you so much for joining me.
Pleasure to be here, Peter.
You know, I've always been fascinated about your practice, your business model, because my father was a chartered accountant, and he used to share that the worst investors, business people, were doctors and dentists. They'd be a soft touch for something stupid. They did not know business. They were not taught business. And you know, I'd like to understand and where you're coming from and how you got into becoming the premier consultant for dental practices in North America.
Sure. I mean, I could start from the beginning. I won't go back to
birth. We can go back to birth, right?
Yeah, it's okay.
We're both Canadian.
Exactly. So 30 years ago, I graduated from East Tennessee State University as a dental hygienist and practiced in Southern United States, and then came back up north where my family was, to Canada, and was a dental hygienist, and started to realize as I was doing dental hygiene over the years that there was a lot more to just cleaning the teeth and the tasks it incorporated into it, that it was truly a human capital business. And looking at where dentistry was back then, I mean, there's been so many changes in 30 years, obviously, but I was approached to ask if I'd like to visit different dental practices and use my passion and influence to influence other dental hygienists to maximize their role, stay motivated, and learn to be a partner with the dentist, because the hygienist truly is the lifeblood of the practice. It generates 80% of the dentist day through patients of record. The rest come from new patients. So it evolved into becoming a dental hygiene consultant. Back then they called it consultant, and had really great success, really great success, because it was really just about how do you be better, not how do you do it different or it's doing it wrong. But you know, it's like anything. When you go into someone else's world, you see things they don't see. And I love that. I would do problems for sport. I love overcoming. I love helping with efficiency, and evolved actually into becoming an entrepreneur.
So when did you start Transitions Group?
I acquired Transitions Group in 2000, the turn of the millennial, when all the computers really didn't blow up and everything was great, and evolved it, grew it into a coaching company with a curriculum and training programs for every facet of the dental practice, not just dental hygiene. So that's where really the true passion started. And then I began speaking all over the continent, speaking teaching at trade shows, coaching, authoring, writing hundreds of articles. And dentistry is my mission. People are my passion, and results is my commitment. So that's not changed. We've adapted and pivoted all through the last, several decades. Dentistry's changed. There's been probably more changes in dentistry in the last probably 5 to 7 years than the previous 30. And a lot of it has to do with technology, with the people part of it, the generational change with dentists. And, the commonality, though, is 99% of dentists 30 years later say one common thing: I just want to be a dentist. So until the schools, their dental education is about perfectionism and their technical providing, but then they get out of school and they have all these hats: owner, leader, HR person, the technology leader. They have so many things to do, and their model's very unorthodox. They don't get to sit in a big, beautiful window over the Bay of San Francisco and contemplate their vision. They are technical providers in a 10 by 10 room, 60 to 70% of their day, with 1 to 3 interruptions an hour. So a lot of it is, how do we create the systems and efficiency around the provider? You can't have a dental practice without a dentist, but how can they be at their best with their speed, their skill, and how do we deal with patients? Dentistry brings up a lot of strong emotions for patients all over the world globally.
I'm sure. It's like what the joke is, like no one goes and says, I want to go and visit my dentist. It's not something that people are happy about unless they're trying to correct their smile. But that's got to be a little difficult. Now, one of the things that I always found fascinating is you go into a practice and you make it more efficient. So you can just share with me, like, how does that process work? Someone who has never worked with you, and if you could share stories about efficiency increases by your involvement, because you're seeing things from outside and you're seeing things that work, and you're able to take best practices and also teach them how to use their technology more efficiently, so they're able to actually service more people and actually be more profitable.
Yeah. And well, we use a methodology called, I love acronyms. It helps duplicate to my team of experts. And I have lots of people that work for me that go out and actually do the training and the speaking besides me. But we assess, every dental practice has commonalities. They have 5 key engines that run their dental practice. So we assess basically those 5 key engines of what's working, what's not, and where's the gap potential of where they could grow. And growth comes in more than just about money. It comes in overhead, in their expenses. I mean, the 5 engines are their capacity of their providers, their chairs, their facility, their revenue, their expenses, their patient experience, and their team. So we basically assess a comprehensive assessment of those 5 engines. There's 25 key metrics. And that's the commonality that no matter where you be in the world, every dental practice would have. The uniqueness comes in 2 of those 5 engines in the people: the leadership, the style, the culture, the team, the roles, and the patient engagement, patient retention, patient frequency, and patient acceptance. So we basically put that all together into a findings report. We believe the 3 rules of change, even though change is inevitable every day in life now, but we deal with changes. If it's working, do more of it. If it's not working, do something different. And if you don't know, find out. So a lot of times it's the 3rd rule of change we're working on, is bringing the awareness to the dentist who's in their 10 by 10 room on what they've created. And this is a solo practitioner, right? So solo practitioners look at, let's take the best, change the rest, and there'll be measurable quantitative and qualitative results as a result of that. And we create a treatment plan, just like a dentist does with a patient. We diagnose the conditions of, like I said, what's working and what's not. We do a treatment plan of what are some, I call dental practice like a whack-a-mole game. You know, we whack-a-mole, or the gopher game, where you hit 3 heads down, 3 heads over here on the game, and 3 more pop up over here. So there's a lot of different moving parts, but it doesn't have to be hard. It's actually quite simple. The complexity comes in the dental individual owner, leader in practice wanting to have a better future than their past and not stay on a flat line. And every practice year over year should be minimally growing 10 to 15%. Otherwise, they're on a flat line and they're going to hit a wall where they decline.
Yes. Now, one of the things that I found very interesting is if people aren't building their practice to sell, then they're going to have a huge issue. So investing back into a practice, because if they haven't done it, they're going to sell at a huge discount, and this is where you also get involved.
I think a lot of it is, you know, and it's evolved over the generations, but you know, they don't think of themselves as a business owner or an entrepreneur, and they truly are. So it's dentistry by accident, where you put a sign up, Field of Dreams, your church congregation comes, you work to 2,000 patients, doesn't happen anymore. And today what we're dealing with between, put the pandemic aside and how dentistry really was shocked into now believing they're resilient and they can weather anything. First time in history, dentistry has ever been ordered to go home. And the whole profession flipped out. So that was a result of COVID, obviously, in the pandemic. But I think some of the other issues are consolidation. And, Canada was probably years behind every English-speaking company as a small cottage industry waiting to be consolidated by private equity and people on the outside of it with lots of money. No one lacks money to want to invest in a dental practice. So consolidation happened. And also saturation. We had too many dentists, droves of dentists coming into the country. We had 50% of the gender change of females becoming dentists because it's a great livelihood to be able to raise a family, work as an associate, and not have all the headaches if you so choose. And also competition. I mean, it's, competition. There's approximately one dentist for every 600 patients in Canada right now, and that's a 1 day a week practice. We do have another issue of only 64% of the Canadians go to the dentist. And same, the US stats are similar. We're always 9 or 10 times difference in 4 to 5 years gap in implementing things as a rule. But I think there's it's a great time to be a dentist. It's just more challenging now to be a solo practitioner and maintain your profitability at your 35 to 40% EBITDA. It's a new word everyone now knows in dentistry. But I think, getting it ready to sell, the reason that's been a big topic is because all of these equity and partners came in with really deep pockets, pushed up the multiples because there wasn't enough to buy. And there's a lot of pressure to acquire. So I think now it's corporate dentistry, DSOs, whatever term you want to use. The US, 28% of the US market is consolidated dentistry. Canada's getting there on a smaller level, obviously in ratio of numbers. But I think at the end of the day, the mission stayed the same. How do we help a private business owner, solo practitioner, or partnership or group that does not want to be part of a larger corporate consolidation? They can control their life, their money, their quality of care without anyone watching over them. And it's getting more and more challenging only because of increased costs. And obviously you can do, life's rule is we're better together. So I think that's really, probably 99% of my career, I've never seen a dental practice without growth potential, that they could do something better. And that's not because we fish for drama or try to find them wrong. It's because it's sitting right in front of them, but they're in it. They're working in their business, not on their business. So as coaches, after we assess and diagnose and treatment plan, training strategy for them, and we put in tracking devices, you'd be amazed. That which is measured improves by 10% with no change. It's simply just the awareness of it. So been doing that, like I said, been doing that for decades with great success. And we have a unique relationship with our clients. Is I guarantee them as a business owner, if they don't get 3 times return on the investment they make in themselves as their most predictable asset, I will refund their consulting fee. And I've never had to do that. It's tried and true. Like I said, the simplicity of there's common engines and metrics and KPIs, it's there. It's how to go in and help the people be fulfilled. Because right now we've got a shortage in this country, in both countries, of dental professionals. A lot of people exited the profession. Salaries are at their highest amount. Human resource claims and, disgruntled employees. So we just keep dancing and pivot. And our goal is to be, 3 or 4 songs ahead of the dance. So that when a dentist runs into a celebration or a win, or they run into a challenge, every problem in dentistry has a solution.
Right. So Lisa, when you first entered dental practice management with transition groups, what were dental practices selling for, and what did dentists look like who were selling their businesses at that point?
Well, I think back then, we're going back, 22 years, that was a lot of the traditionalists, and traditionalists back then probably didn't always believe they had anything to sell. So it was getting them in the mindset that there is something here that you built, because 80% of dentistry value comes from goodwill. And that's the patient numbers, the patient retention, the frequency of visits, and what's produced in each patient in an annual basis. So they were set, like some of them were just walking away and just leaving them. And then generationally, right, they're thinking, I've had a good run. And in Canada, medical doctors not allowed to sell their goodwill. So dentistry is, right? A medical doctor isn't allowed to sell that they've got 5,000 people that might get sick for a new doctor to come in by, whereas dentistry you can. So back then though, then the baby boomer dentists, they were the really passionate ones. Some days I do miss my baby boomers. They were in it for the love of dentistry, and the money just came, and they really didn't know why or how. They just worked hard, and it just did. And then they decided, you know what, we're going to work till we die. What's retirement look like? What will I do? How will I still take 12 trips a year and drive my nice cars? So baby boomers put a lot into building the dental practice because they also valued patient relationships and had a lot of networks that way. And that was the Field of Dreams model, where you put a sign up and you told, 12 people who told 12 people, and you built a practice in like a year or two. So I think the evolution of it is where back then I wasn't involved in practice sales. I didn't really pay attention to it. I was all about, no one I worked with was talking about selling. They were talking about, how do I grow and have balance in life? How do I manage my time? How do I still have what I want, but still be a dentist, keep all my employees, da, da, da. So I think it's when the baby boomers decided, you know what, it's time to go. Okay. When they decided that, they probably created a lot of unorthodox ownership models where they could sell the ownership and the headaches and still remain being a dentist. A lot of dentists, when they talk about retirement, they still want to work in the mouth. They just don't want to do all the stuff around them. Right. So then 7 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, when there was a huge push with a company called Dental Corp came into Canada through some backing of Australian consolidation, through New Zealand was doing it. We were really the last country that was primed for this to happen. And they started focusing on profit, EBITDA, obviously, because private equity, people love to know not what you make, what is it you earn, right?
Yeah.
And the return. And they just, because there wasn't enough to buy, they just kept pushing up these multiples. And today I've never seen, aside from right now with the economy, the inflation and all the drama with the governments and everything going on. I mean, dental practices are selling at the highest multiples that have been seen in 100 years ever. And a lot of that's because of the competition. If you said to me you had a practice for sale right now, I have 4,500 Canadian dentist buyers on my list. So it's an interesting dynamic. Not everyone wants to be part of a large group, right? We've got a saturation of dentists coming. Foreign trained dentists now comprise a big percentage of the dentists coming to Canada. Huge immigration, foreign trained, that have been dentists in other places, that once they get their Canadian license, they want to own because they've done it before in their other country. Right. And they don't necessarily didn't do all that upset in their life, go through the, year or two of exams and possibly going back to a Canadian dental school to get a Canadian license to work for someone else. So it's been a really interesting phenomena. And I think, corporate and consolidation still, I think, is around 6-7% of the market. It'll probably grow, but not at the pace it's grown in this first 5 years, because it was new. Good, bad, or ugly. Everyone has a different perspective of it, right?
Yeah.
So there's not a right or wrong way, but for for the solo entrepreneur, for the partnerships that want to be successful and want to have their autonomy and build their own business, they are going to have an opportunity to sell for more than anyone ever dreamed. I don't know how here's the reality. I don't understand how the multiples can go up, because to me, it's very simple. If you buy a dental practice, you need to be able to service the debt of the cost of funding of what you paid. So, banks have been very, very friendly to dentists. Dentists get the best interest rates of any professional. They get under prime as a given. They get 100% financing is what was for decades talked about. Well, banks will 100% finance of a good business scenario where you're able to service the debt. If you want to overpay, if someone wants to overpay for a practice, they're going to have to find their own money or secondary funding at very high costs, or they're going to have to find other investors. So the business model of the actual transactional part of selling and buying, it's changed dramatically. And, dentists that, you think about it, there's another generation, I call them the latchkey kids. That's my generation, where we were making our own meals at 7, hope parents checked on us only if we stayed out past the streetlights, darkness, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing.
I'm that generation.
I'm finding that generation is ready to give up the ownership, invest that money in different places, but still stay on and have a cash flow and be paid 40% of what they produce. They don't want to work till they die, like baby boomers profess to. So also I often say to a dentist, if you could just be a dentist and work on one success at a time, why do you want to own 4? You can only be in so many places at the same time. So there's this other tier level where you've got the younger generation that wants to own 3 or 4. And I say, well, how about you perfect the first one? There's basic systems, there's basic processes, get that profitable, and then you can decide how you're going to duplicate and leverage that. So it's exciting. I mean, I love change. I would do change for sport. I love it. Not everyone does. Some people call that chaos, but I think change, it's called calculated change. And you don't change things that are working. Sometimes when a dentist gets stressed, or a dental team, they tend to change the things that are working as opposed to being able to look at and accept where our other, when I say deficiencies, it's just unseen potential and possibility. And I've never seen a practice without some level of possibility for a better future.
So in your experience, most practices can be made more efficient. Now, is this able to be applied to, like, say, multiple practices? Because you just mentioned right now, Lisa, which caught my attention, is, and I know this for a fact, a lot of dentists want to have multiple practices and they want associates because they know that if they have a business mind, that this is going to be a great income flow for them because there's a profitability. People want to keep their teeth, healthy.
Right. Well, and keep in mind, I think, it sounds like you'd be more profitable, more is better. But remember, if you've got a second, third location, you still have a cost of another provider to provide the dentistry at 40% of their net lab.
I'm going to focus right now on other opportunities, other markets, because you've seen how in the United States and in Canada, practice management tools have been put in. They become much more efficient. What's the efficiency in the car industry and all these other industries have now been placed into the dental market. Is there a huge opportunity that this could be applied to other markets?
Other countries, you mean?
Other countries.
Well, here's the thing. It's duplicatable. It's a playbook that's duplicatable. So let's face it. I mean, I'm a big sports fan. Every football team can have a playbook that's all different. Some win, some lose. When it comes to the model of a dental practice, there's a common playbook that's common. And remember, the reason I still have a job is dentists don't have a playbook, or they're not taught how to run their practices. They're taught how to be a gifted technician without in the oral health. Okay. So there is a duplicatable playbook. I've shown it in thousands of practices, duplicatable playbook. That is why consolidation can work. There's duplicatable systems. There's 44 systems that run a dental practice every day. They're not new. Sometimes I can't even stand to hear. I've been teaching dentistry a morning huddle for 25 years, and half of them still don't do it. And if they met for 10 minutes with their team before the day, they increase their top line by 10% with nothing else, right? So I think they're duplicatable. The key is why I had to evolve into training and coaching and tracking devices is because the people don't always want to go, they want the game, but they don't always want to go through the storming and the pain of what they have to do to adjust to get it, right? So it's definitely a people business. You know, when a dentist calls me and says, hi, I want to buy 5 practices and flip them. I said, doctor, they're not pancakes. These are human capital, relationship built businesses. And the number one reason a Canadian patient changes a dental practice is because of indifference. It's not because you mess up their filling or they broke their tooth eating potatoes. It's because it's indifference, lack of any connection and lack of any empathy from the healthcare provider. And patients have high expectations. Patients have high expectations and, you know, they want to be treated as an individual. So having said all of that, it's absolutely, the playbook's duplicatable. It's been around for decades. There's hundreds of people like me that have been talking about it. My mentors have been talking about it for 40 years. So that's not what's different. What it is what are you going to do different to get a different result? And what behaviors do we need in 80% of the patients in dentistry make their decision to say yes to the treatment plans recommended based on the dental team. When that dentist leaves the room, that patient is going to town with that dental professional for advocacy, for understanding, for clarity, those kinds of things. So absolutely the model's duplicatable. I mean, you know, there's going to be some nuances, like there's different fee structures. You know, you might pay $200 for this procedure in one place, $100 for another. But I think if you keep, you know, you've got consistency of fees, you've got duplicatable ways of operating. You've got the technology, right? Dentistry is, you know, the digital, like crazy, like digital technology has made the technical part of being a dentist so much easier. So much easier because their diagnosis is predictable. The big thing that's coming next is AI. Big push for artificial intelligence to get into dentistry, where you literally, the smartest people in the profession are getting together and writing algorithms that when you put an X-ray on the screen, there's common diagnosis of conditions and treatment plans that haven't changed, right? Then it goes to so I think, is dentistry in the way it's run duplicatable? My whole life's been dedicated to it. I would bet my life on it. And I've shown how it is. Where the uniqueness comes in is in the demographics, the demographics and looking at the human element side of it.
Right. So technically, if it is duplicatable and it's so expensive in, let's say, the Canadian and the American market, if you could find a ripe country that people care about their teeth and you duplicate it, they would be able to purchase them for a lot less. You would be able to use those drivers to increase revenue, and then the multiples would, you know, the investment, the return on investment would be much greater than, let's say, if I was to buy in a mature market like Canada, where the prices have just gone through the roof. What's the highest multiple you've seen?
12 times.
12. And how much was the practice? What was the profit? $1 million?
Their EBITDA would have been 800,000.
Mm-hmm.
So that's more money than any solo practitioner ever dreamed their baby would sell for.
Yes. Right, the buyers.
Oh, the buyers. Well, here's the thing. If a buyer does it properly, because remember, we work with dentists from graduation to death. Okay. Yeah. I don't do wills. Don't hear it like that. But so they, if a buyer does it properly, you know, there's 10 things that you do in the first 3 days, 3 weeks, and 3 months that if you do it, you're going to have 100 times more success in being able to purge the past of the relationships of the previous dentist, right? And if they do it properly, it can work really well. The ones that have buyer's remorse are the ones that don't. They go in and they think they're going to make it theirs the first day. They change it. They disrupt the team. They, you know, they don't look at what is it that, what was working here of why I bought this so I can keep doing it. And you don't need, change isn't something you can make as a drastic hurricane in the first 3 months. Patients leave, the team leaves, right? So the ones that have buyer's remorse, I think there's probably a few dentists that sold to corporate that probably thinks, oh, I didn't know what I was getting into. But a lot of that's because, they didn't realize you're now working for someone.
Yes.
Right. And you've been an autonomy of an entrepreneur for decades. How are you going to be as an employee? As someone said to me, Lisa, you'd be a high performing employee, but you'd be a pain in the butt. I said, yes, because I'm all about results and I do it my way with respect to you. However, you know what? That's the big shift. It's a big there's seller's remorse, but then there's buyer's remorse. And I will tell you, is a corporate group ever going to tell you they wish they didn't buy that practice? They're not going to ever say that. Like that's never going to get public, right? What they've now got to do to answer to their investors is, how do we take this overpriced practice we paid and how do we get it to pay for itself?
Right. Here's a question I have. I would see this is where you'd be very useful. Similar to if I'm going to put an offer in a home, I want an inspection. Do you have buyers who actually hire you to go and look at what the potential is for the practice before it's purchased?
Yeah. We do buyer's due diligence, it's called. So once they put in, there's a startup where they're looking for real estate and they're going to start from zero and whatever. That's different. But if they're going to purchase the goodwill of another practice at those high multiples, why they would do that without any due diligence is beyond me. But for years they did. There's not been any representation for buyers for many, many years until corporate came into it. But absolutely, we do. It's called a buyer's due diligence. So we validate the appraisal of what they're going to buy, but we look at what are going to be the nuances of what their life's going to look like if they purchase this practice, and how are they going to pay back their cost of funding.
And so this is something that's highly advisable, especially for corporate investors, to bring in someone as yourself to see this is what the plan would be if we purchased this practice, and this is what this practice is worth right now.
Right. So Peter, you even know in your world, like, who's going to make $1 million investment at a cost of funding and not make sure it's worth it? Right. It's interesting. So, I mean, it's evolved a lot. Now buyers call us and say, could you help me make sure this is a good buy? And they work with their accountants and their lawyers, but we are from an operational perspective.
Right.
So that they can plan for what it's going to be like to not only just pay it back, but also how are they going to function in there and keep it viable? Because anyone who buys a practice has to at least maintain what they bought it at. They can't decline.
Yes.
Because they bought it based on that level of profit, right? So I think then, once they get in there, then we work with them on a strategy for their first year. So after the first 3 days, first 3 weeks, first 3 months, right? Here's how you can do it properly. Not because we say so. It's just how human nature works, and the transfer of a human capital goodwill-based business is all about relationship and trust. Canadians don't go to people they don't trust. And Canadians don't want to move service providers. It's a lot of work and money if they don't have to. So it's how do we maintain, it's all about the patient retention, right?
Yes. No, I definitely see that. What I'm looking at is here's mature markets. I'm looking at emerging markets that have not put this into place. And then what I'm also looking at is this investment opportunity. And a conversation that you and I had privately, you were sharing with me, Lisa, that during COVID and the lockdowns, dentistry has proven itself to be resilient and profitable when many businesses were not. Therefore, many investors are calling you specifically saying, do you know of a good practice? And you really don't have a good practice because there's very few practices in Canada that have not had like 50 million people jump on top of it, because it's just when I used to write for Oral Health, and I used to write for Ontario Dental Magazine, I was really surprised to find out in Canada, a country of close to 40 million people, there are only, between the students and practicing dentists, there are only about 18,000.
Yeah,
And
I
they're
mean,
only about,
yeah, there's probably 16,000 licenses,
yes.
right? Approximating, because remember, you stay as a dentist even after you pass. I'm not sure why, in posthumous, whatever that word is, right? So I think, but the reality of it, how many dental practice actually practices are there? Because you could have 2-3 dentists in one place, right? You're looking at about probably 10,000 different dental practices. 60% of those are in Ontario. So
How many in Toronto in the GTA?
oh, one on every street, every block.
Yes.
Toronto, here's the interesting thing. In Canada, every major urban center is saturated. So when someone says to me, I want to start from zero, I like start to palpate and meditate. And I go, okay, so where are you going to get your patients from? You're just going to have to steal them because they're not there, right? I mean, this, we're trying to get more Canadians to go to the dentist. That would help, right? With access to care. I think, there's different things being worked on right now to help families get access to dental care. But I think there's still a lot of competition for the people that go to the dental practice. And that's a lot of them have dental benefits through their employer.
Yes. So I see a huge potential. I see the fact that this lessons that you perfected in Canada and the US is easily transferable to practices, let's say in Central America, which people actually spend money on their teeth.
Yeah, you get me a country. We need a patient, a provider, and a chair. It's the tripod model of success. You find me a place where there's patients, there's providers, and there's a place for them to go to have it done, to have their oral health taken care of, right? Then it can work. I don't know how, I don't want to simplify my entire existence in the whole dental global world, but really a patient, the oral health is a gateway to overall body wellness, right? I think a big part of these other countries it's an education process of them understanding where their oral health fits into their whole life and their body health. And dentistry's come a long way on that.
Well, I just want to move over to one more topic. The reason you focus on dentistry is primarily because they're private businesses. They're not having a one-payer system. They're able to charge based like reasonable amounts. Because I know when you go for a physical, the doctor in Toronto only gets $60. Well, it's just not worth their time to spend any time with the patient. Now, in countries where they have private clinics, your skill set that's transferable to those practices as well, because the essence you shared with me, it's the individual, it's the patient, it's how they feel. And in essence, there's always fat that can be cut.
Yes, I don't tend to use that term.
Okay, give me a better term.
There's always potential. Like I said, if they have patients, they have providers to deliver the procedures, and they have this facility to work on them, there's going to be potential and possibility. And then the great thing about dentistry, it's got a repetitive income stream, right? So it's got annuities through dental hygiene, which was where I came from, right? So you think of it like, for instance, in Canada, the annual revenue per patient across the board is $750 per patient per year. That's not much, right? That's not, like when I say that's not much, if you think about it, that's 2 hygiene visits.
Yeah.
Right. So it would be looking at that country going, okay, what's the per capita? How many providers do we have? How many patients do we have that would want our service in private clinics? Right? How do we make it affordable? And how do we find flexible ways for them to pay? And how do we get them to see their oral health as not something that they have to just lose their teeth and be embarrassed and fearful of? It's a lot of communication. But it would be exciting to look at it because, like I said, if there's private clinics and there's professionals to deliver the services, I'm sure there's places to deliver. You can find.
So anything to do with health, and that would be oral health or my physical health, provided that it is a private model, you'll be able to put octane in the tanks. And on top of that, if it was managed, let's say, a corporate ownership, in essence, the rate of return would be so much better because these would be very fertile fields, because you don't have like 4,500 dental professionals who are looking for a practice, considering there's only 10,000 practices out there.
Yeah, staggering. That's the saturation level, right? But I think I'm not sure what you're asking me, but I believe if you found, like I said, if it's a private clinic, there's a fee structure where we can have fair and customary, it's about the fees we bill is what creates the production. And you work on a growth strategy.
Okay.
Everyone has to start somewhere. Peter, I did want to speak to that too. The thing about these other countries you're talking about, if the origination of it is the multipliers that are paid in North America don't have to apply there. Right. It's been a growth over time for those multipliers to build up. But if you're going into what you call, what I call a green, meaning it's new to consolidation. And you look at the legislation, and does a dentist have to own a dental clinic? Does a doctor have to own a dental clinic? That has a lot to do with it, right? And how the legislative of their regulatory bodies. But I think if you going in at lower multiples, the growth is there.
Yes.
And it would be doing the due diligence on assessing that clinic to say, here's where the growth strategies are, and writing and doing a gap analysis of a conservative, average, and optimistic better future that's controlled by proven, tried and true techniques. I don't mean to sound condescending. It's just simple to me.
Yes. Well, you know, you've been doing it for so long, you walk in and you see it, just like when a dentist looks at someone's mouth, they immediately know if there's an abscess just by the way that they're playing with their tooth. So, yeah. Lisa, I want to thank you so much. This is so helpful. And I will leave you with this. I think we have that country for your 4,500 investors.
Okay, well, let me know. And I mean, even the people that live in that country, I'm sure that people don't know what they don't know about what they could earn as a dentist, right? And there's a lot of North American patients that go to other places because it's cheaper. It's not always the same quality, but I do want to stress it's always about maintaining the quality of care.
Yes.
Right. And that can be done because the providers they're intellectually brilliant. You know, no one gets into dental school with a 42 in a C average. Right. It's how do we take that and maximize it and leverage it for them to get what they deserve as a private business owner. And for us too, it's absentee. It might be absentee ownership, but it's not absentee management.
Yes. Well, Lisa, you've been fantastic. Thank you very much for spending
Let me know when you find your country. I'm there.
You're gonna be the first person I call because I believe that I know you are the expert.
Yeah. Well,
thank you so much.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate it.
And the greatest healer for anybody later on in life is to mentor younger people. And I find this all the time. I sit down with business owners all the time, and they always give me unsolicited advice because they want to share their knowledge, and it's really important.
Here with me is Peter Merrick,
president of merrickwealth.com.
Peter is an income and capital enhancement consultant,
speaker and author.
He is also a recognized expert in the world of succession planning.
Over 800 published articles and 3 industry textbooks.
He's a Canadian who joined us today from San Diego, California. Thanks for joining us.
So, Peter Merrick, tell us about you.
Well, I've been in the financial service industry since the end of 1991.
I graduated during the recession. The baby boomers were in their positions, so there was no jobs. So the 2 businesses that opened up were the technology field and the financial field. It was the Wild West in both of them. So I had this brilliant idea, and I had a friend of mine, and we started talking, and I said, hey, how difficult would it be for us to get a mutual fund dealer license? Not difficult enough. Thank God for those 10 years, the market just went up. I would sit down and I would take somebody's entire life savings that they spent 15, 20 years accumulating it, this young kid who knew nothing about nothing, and I would go and just invest it, and luckily it went up because the markets were crazy in the 90s. It was a boom time.
But in 2004, my life blew up.
I almost went bankrupt, but I was very fortunate because there were very few CFPs at the time, but every university in Canada wanted to offer the CFP program. So I got recruited as a prof. And it was great. I was reading all the textbooks. I would call all the big publishers. And what I came to the conclusion was the succession planning was missing.
One of the issues is there was very little talking beyond the accumulation stage. Like, how do you have a healthy life after you've done that?
I also looked at demographics. At the turn of the 20th century, the average life expectancy in the West and North America was 43 years old, and people are dying at 83. No one ever lived to 83.
Well, so I always say that there's two financial plans. There's the financial one that we work on, and there's what you get to do with all your time and that energy once you're done. And with this thing that they've been racing towards, they've hit it. But if they haven't thought about what they're going to do after or how they're going to feel validation for their existence, they just never stop. They just keep going.
Well, it's not anybody's fault because when people are young, they focus too much on doing. And later on in life, they have to focus on being.
So I wrote my own textbooks because
I thought it was very important to talk about how do you transition from the first half of life, which Carl Jung called it the morning, where you're accumulating, whether it's your ego, designations, education, houses.
The second half is deconstruction, giving wisdom away, giving away my money, giving away my time, leaving a legacy.
So talk to me about that stage. What's the purposeful way or kind of the best practices, ways, or considerations for people to take when transitioning into that stage of life?
Well, one, decide whether or not you want an exit. I find between the ages of 55 and 70, a lot of people feel that I'm just tired doing the same thing that I've always done, and I have the money now. So maybe I should get out when the going is good and pass on my business to someone who's got the energy to navigate it. Number two, who are you going to sell your business to? There's one issue about selling it to a family member or an employee. What happens after you sell it? Things don't go right. A lot of business owners want to sell their business because they just want to wash their hands. But by selling it to someone you know, you're not getting out of your business. The best is to sell to a third-party purchaser. The last one is after they make that transition from being a business owner, building a nest egg for themselves to have choice, they don't know what they're going to do. I've spoken to people who say, I'm going to take up golf. So my question is, do you golf now? I don't golf now. So what makes you think you're going to golf later? I just want to share with you guys a story. There was a gentleman, his name was Bob Hunter. He was quite a celebrity. He started Greenpeace during the height of my blow up. When I was going through business loss, he was bringing me on national television. And you know what he was doing? He was saying, so Peter, don't you do that? And then he would give my phone number and he would give my web address. The reason why it went by merrickwealth.com, because it was almost like a phone number that would run across the television and I could actually see myself making money off of it. And he was dying. He had prostate cancer. And he turned to me and said, Peter, one day you will be in a position that you'll help someone else. And let me share with you about the legacy. Bob's been dead for 16 years. And I'm sharing you the legacy of Bob Hunter because he made a difference for me. And if I make a difference in anyone else's life, I'm a product of those people who are willing to do things and they had no expectations. And a true mentor is someone who has no expectations that they're going to see the tree blossom.
The reason I wrote The King of Main Street is younger people don't know how to find the right mentors, and older people have this need to mentor. It's almost like a biological need because they can see beyond their physical existence. They know that the sun was here before them and it will be after them and what's going to be left behind that they leave.
I would joke, I can't make you money, but I can definitely save you money. What I mean by that is I am a Sherpa. That's someone who would guide someone to help them come down. But I realize the most precious asset they have is not their money. It's their time.
What last piece of advice would you like to give our listeners?
If you have a business, the most important thing to ask yourself is, why did you get into the business? And it's usually not to create a legacy, it's to create the lifestyle that you want. And at that point, ask yourself, what do you want to do
during your last days.
The last human freedom is to choose one's own beliefs, one's own way. Everything else you can have taken away from you. But what you believe and how you choose to act in the world, that is yours. And the greatest healer for anybody later on in life is to mentor younger people. And that is going to give you fulfillment emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. You guys have been wonderful, and I want to thank you, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you.